right, welcome everybody to another week of the Commanders Film Room. I'm one of your hosts, George Carmen. I'm joined by my guys, Mark and Nick. You guys can find us every Wednesday at 4 o'clock on the Big Doug and Carmen Show on YouTube. You can also follow us on Twitter. Mark and Nick, how you guys doing today?
Pretty good.
Good, man. How about you?
Doing very well. Doing very well. Guys, today what we're going to do is we're going to break down a Atlanta Falcons loss, 34-27. A pretty disappointing defensive performance, and that's what going to be the primary focus of our show today. Nick, we talked offline. The Atlanta Falcons scored on 6 of 8 possessions against the Washington Commanders. What is your level of concern long term for Washington, and what would you kind of peg the issues in regard to the game?
Yeah, if we're calling the rest of this season long term, I'm pretty concerned. I was kind of concerned going into the season. I thought that they did a decent job patching up some issues in the secondary, but lose Will Harris, who I thought was pretty good, had a bad game one time, but I thought he was pretty good. And then it's just been disappointing for Sanderstill and Lattimore right now. So secondary is the biggest problem. The defensive line is fine. It's kind of what I kind of expected from them, but yeah, long term, the secondary is a bit of a problem right now. Your best hope really is that they can just clean up some of the communication problems. We'll probably look at all of them, but there's a lot. There were a lot in previous games that kind of got masked over by a good defensive line performance, but didn't have that this week. So you got to see in full effect some of those issues.
Absolutely. And Mark, a lot of finger pointing has been at Joe Witt this past week in regard to whether his defense is under control, whether he's calling the right scheme. How do you see the defense right now? Would you peg Joe Witt as the biggest problem right now?
No, I wouldn't peg him as the biggest problem. When you hear constantly, the defense is having communication issues, that tends to go on the coaching staff. And there have been communication issues, but there have also been just plays where it's straight man coverage and players are getting beat. And that's ultimately everything does come down to Joe Witt and the coaching staff because he is ultimately responsible for everything. But at the same time, they pretty clearly laid out what their plan was defensively, and they have done since they've been here. They want to play man coverage. They want to be able to hold up on the outside so that they can send extra rushers and be creative with their blitz packages. And the man coverage isn't holding up on the outside. And we saw that at the start of last year, and they had to adjust, and they did. And they adjusted a lot earlier than they have this year because obviously they had St. Juste and Forbes at corner, and they had to adjust and change things around then. This year, I think they have more faith in their guys, in obviously Lattimore, who they traded for, Amos, who has done pretty well. Sanderstill, obviously, they drafted as well. But Sanderstill and Lattimore have really struggled to start the year. So when you have 2 of your top 3 corners are really struggling, and hopefully I'll be able to show this as we get into the film, it kind of doesn't matter what he does schematically. They're going to have issues if your corners can't cover anyone, almost regardless of what you call. So, I don't put the blame primarily on him at this point. I would say that their biggest issues are players are not playing well enough as well as they should be.
Got it. We'll jump in the film in a moment, but just a quick question to either one of you, whoever wants to answer this one. Mikey Sanderstill was a standout rookie last year, really shined. He was on the boundary for the most part, a great run supporter as well. And I think we were expecting maybe a step forward. And I'm not losing my faith in Mikey Sanderstill. I'm just kind of curious, what do you think the deficit is, and what's the barrier for him to being successful right now?
Do you want to jump on this one, Nick? Or
I want to talk about secondary players coverage in general. It's a very volatile position. We kind of see year to year with our grades, and it can fluctuate a lot year to year. And a lot of it is due to the talent that you're facing. And there were moments last year where you could kind of see Sanderstill get beat a little bit, but there were more moments, more flashes of positive than negative last year. This year, there has not been many positive flashes really. And now I don't know if that's, he wants to be more comfortable on the outside, but even when he's outside, there's still some problems as well there. So it's kind of tough to be push him outside and that solves all your problems. I don't really think it does because, Noah Igbenogany, again, last year, he was also kind of up and down. He was really kind of good in man coverage, sticky in man coverage, but he struggled at the catch point at times. And so again, you just shuffle things around. that usually doesn't always work. A lot of times with coverages and secondaries and communication, the more time you have together, the more you play together, the better that communication gets in years past. So for me, I wouldn't really shake things up. I just kind of hope that you kind of keep going along and you just kind of hope that kind of fixes itself.
Got it. And then
and I'll give some views on Sandwich Still on when we get to a play that I want to talk about with Sandwich Still particularly. But
let's get it started.
I think there's some technical stuff for him to work on that have been. But so we'll get into the film. So we'll start with the Falcons' first drive. And early on in the game, I know we talked about that they want to come out and be this man coverage team that matches up man to man. But they actually early on in the game decided they were going to try and play a lot of zone coverage. And you'll see that here. This is one of I think this was the first third down that the Falcons had. I think it was 3rd and 5. And what you see is we've got a bunch set up at the top here. Let me get to my thing here. Yeah, so we got a bunch set up at the top here with Drake London outside, and he's going to motion across to a stack with Kyle Pitts. And they're just going to run a basic corner flat. So London's going to run to the flat, and you've got Kyle Pitts. He's going to run a corner route. Now, this is a good combination against cover 2 typically because you stress an outside corner that has to be high load. But if you're playing man, you usually can match up against it. And if you're playing cover 3, you match up against it because you have a flat defender and a deep defender. What the Commanders do is you can see initially they've got, I think this is Jeremy Reeves back here, and you've got Quan Martin working down to cover this bunch set. But once they go in motion, Martin motions back to the deep middle, and Jeremy Reeves comes down to work with Trey Amos on this stack set. And what they do is they play cover 3. And so that should pretty much cover these 2 routes. You should have a deep outside third defender, which should typically be the cornerback. Occasionally, it can be the safety if you play what's called sky variation, where you have a safety and you have the corner playing the flat just to mix things up. But typically, it's the corner goes deep, and then the safety comes down and plays the flat. So we'll run this through here, and you'll see we get the motion from Drake London. You see the rotation of the safeties, and then we get to this point, and you're meant to have cover 3. You can see Lattimore's out here. You've got Martin as a deep third defender. You've got 4 underneath zone defenders. You've got a flat defender, hook curl, and then another flat defender in Jeremy Reeves. And then you've got Trey Amos out here that I'm assuming it's Amos. Technically, it could be Reeves if it's a cover 3 sky call, but for the most part, it's probably Amos. Should be the one sinking back, and you should have a flat defender on Drake London, and you should have a deep third defender on Kyle Pitts. But what ends up happening is these guys either don't communicate it, or Amos doesn't get the call, and they both end up trying to cover London in the flat, and Kyle Pitts runs straight up the seam wide open, and then you get Michael Penix sitting in the pocket and finds him down the field for a 26-yard gain on 3rd and 5, which is obviously not ideal. So that was them trying to play a very basic cover 3 call that they would have had built into check when they saw a motion like that. When you go from a 3x1 to a 2x2 set and the safeties rotate, that should be a very, very basic sort of, I don't want to say day 1 install, but very early install. You
can say day 1 install. That's about as basic of a cover 3 as it can be. If you go back, that's again when we're talking about blame and who we want to blame it on, Joe Witt or players. Joe Witt called kind of the perfect defense here. Like, you have exactly what you want. This concept plays perfectly in the defense's hand for cover 3 because you have these guys running straight into the leverage. I'm not entirely sure what Amos is doing here. They never ran we call it 3 cloud, where you rotate the safety over the top. They never ran any of that this year, so it's like I'm 99.9% sure this is on Amos. But yeah, this is just a basic kind of spot drop cover 3, and Mark was being nice, but this is easy day 1 stuff.
Yeah.
And it's just a brutal start, and it kind of summed up the entire game.
Mm-hmm. So a little bit later, same drive, still the opening drive. This was the 3rd down right at the end, and they got lucky that Penix missed this throw. Now the Falcons are expecting man coverage, and because as we talked about, that's what the Commanders have always talked about wanting to be under Dan Quinn and Joe Witt. And so what they run is a mesh concept, and they run it slightly differently. And they did quite a funky thing where they put a second tight end in the backfield as a blocking running back, and that allowed them to free up Bijan Robinson and put him basically as a slot receiver. But essentially, it's your basic mesh concept. So you've got a receiver running a shallow cross from one side, a receiver running a shallow cross from the other. If you get man coverage, it's really hard to cover both of these guys. They kind of tend to create a pick for each other. And then you've also got the running back wheel, although Robinson is a slot receiver, he's running the wheel route. And we'll come back to this play later on with Robinson in the backfield. And then you've got Drake London here, who's going to run the spot up over the middle of the field against zone coverage, right? So that is what they've called, and they're expecting man coverage, and that's why you call a mesh concept, is because you're expecting man coverage. Again, Joe Witt surprises them and goes with a zone coverage, and we'll run it through here, and you'll see as they play, as the play progresses, you see you got Lattimore bailing deep, you've got a safety holding his position kind of as a quarter safety. I think this is some sort of cover 6 where you've got quarter, half. So you've got a Lattimore playing an outside quarter. I think this is Quan Martin playing an inside quarter, and then you've got Jeremy Reeves playing a deep half. And then so you split the field, you get quarters on this side and you get cover 2 on this side, right? So they surprise them here, and that kind of kills the mesh concept pretty easily, or it should kill the mesh concept pretty easily. What happens is these guys do kind of get bottled up in the middle of the field, and that gets beat. But they have an issue with Bijan Robinson over here. Again, it's zone coverage, so someone should be responsible for A, the flat, and B, this outside quarter. And we're looking at the two guys that we talked about, Samerstill and Lattimore. And Lattimore should be responsible for the deep outside. Samerstill should be responsible for the flat. Now, they both kind of pin inside. Lattimore is more focused on Drake London, and so he comes inside trying to make sure that gets picked up. And you do see some zone match concepts where they do this, and so in that situation, the flat defender should recognize that there's a guy gone vertical inside. He needs to attach to this flat receiver, and if he turns up the field, he needs to attach and turn and run with him. He needs to carry him, as it's called. Now, Samerstill doesn't do that. He just holds his position here, leaving. If Robinson had run just an out route, he'd have been open. But we'll run it through, and you'll see both these guys are just kind of holding their position inside. Neither of them are covering Robinson. He is wide open. This should be a touchdown. They get bailed out here by Dorrance Armstrong inside, getting a bit of pressure, and Penix underthrows it while dropping back. But that was another zone coverage bust on the very first drive. So you don't want to throw out a game plan after the first drive when you've had a couple of zone busts. So second drive, they try to play a little bit more zone, and this was the Drake London touchdown. And this is a nice concept from the Falcons, where it's effectively a spot concept where you have what ends up being a corner route, a flat route, and a receiver spotting up in between. But they have these two guys switch what they're doing. So you have Mooney running what looks like it's initially going to be a slant or a shallow cross, and then he peels back out to the corner. And then you have London running what looks like it's going to be some sort of outbreaking route or a stick route or something, and then he spots up inside. So it's a nice concept, but you get, I think this is Reeves going out to the flat. You get Lattimore, who's initially relating to what was the number one receiver. He should now be thinking, at this point where they transition over, he should now be thinking Drake London should be his responsibility, but he's eyes on Mooney. He goes inside, and you've got Reeves in the flat, who's having to focus on Bijan Robinson, as we talked about on the last play with Samerstill. He wasn't looking at the flat at all when he was the flat defender. So Reeves has to cover that, which means Lattimore should be thinking, oh, I need to come into London because he's now the outside number receiver, what you would call the number one receiver at that point. And this guy's gone too far inside. That should be passed off to Luvu or the safety inside. Lattimore doesn't do that. He kind of just holds his position. And with the safety working out to the flat, that just leaves this nice little gap for London to sit down and make his catch, and Lattimore can't get back out there. So another coverage bust playing zone.
So Mark, really quickly, sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
What would you attest to this, though? I feel like maybe the last pass play, maybe it was a little more complex of a passing concept. I don't necessarily see that, but previously that was a mesh concept, which is pretty run-of-the-mill in regard to a passing play. Was just a mental lapse by the players? Do you think it's a lack of chemistry? I know it's hard to say because you're not in their shoes, but what do you think's going on?
Yeah, I mean, as we kind of showed, like the first 2 plays, it was basic cover 3, day 1 install bust, and then it's a mesh concept with playing cover 6. Someone's got to cover the wheel route from the running back. Like you should know this.
They're like college concepts, right? They're very basic from what I gather, right?
Yeah, like everyone runs mesh. Everyone runs
it was a cool way for them. It was kind of essentially like kind of mesh rail when they have Bijan going on that wheel route, and it's a cool way to do it. Shout out to my former colleague Zach Robinson.
That's a boy.
But again, this is stuff that you should be able to pick up. Like he's not calling that play because he thinks they're running quarters or cover 6 or whatever it was. He's thinking man coverage. Joe Witt again makes the right call there, and you got guys, because like Mark said, even if Bijan breaks outside, Mikey's not in a position to make that play. So it's just tough. It's tough either way. I mean, I don't know. There's for us to say like, how do you fix this? You don't know because you're not in these meeting rooms and what they're talking about. But it really kind of all stems down to communication and trust when you're in these zone coverage with these match coverages and stuff. And they clearly just don't really have trust right now with one another, and they don't trust each other where they're going to be. And so it just kind of causes you to pause for a second. And then if you pause for a split second in the NFL, you're done.
Makes sense.
Yep. So, first 2 drives, they tried to play zone coverage and it had quite a few busts. And so naturally, you're like, okay, maybe we should switch things up. So what do on the 3rd drive? They play some man coverage. And a lot of people have talked the past few weeks about how they deal with motion. And there has been some issues with them dealing with motion. But it's not all exclusively like, if you run motion, you beat the Commander's defense. Like that's not what it is, right? And this play is an example of that. So we have Darnell Mooney on the outside here. We got Drake London in the slot. These guys are going to essentially switch what they do at the snap. So Mooney's going to go in motion, and he's going to become the slot receiver with London becoming the outside receiver. Now that could cause some confusion if you're having communication issues, who picks up who. But they pick this up cleanly. So when Mooney goes in motion, Lattimore follows inside. Sammer still understands what's happening. He attaches to Mooney on the vertical route, and Lattimore picks up Drake London. So they pass this off smoothly. So it's not all miscommunication and they get motion on us, so we're screwed, right? It's not all that. This is a play where it shows they do communicate some things okay, and they do pick it up properly. The issue, as we'll find out, is that they don't play the coverage very well. So they pass this off, and you can see that they've communicated it well. Sammer still is immediately covering Mooney. Lattimore is immediately attaching to Drake London. The issue is that Drake London, and this is 2nd and 16, by the way, he runs an out and up, so he runs a double move. And Lattimore, as soon as Drake London starts breaking out, starts trying to grab on and try to undercut what could be an out route, not thinking that, it's 2nd and 16. They are miles away from this is the first down yardage, right? So he's not thinking double move, he's thinking out route. And he gets beat on the double move, tries to grab on, can't, and then loses a few yards down the sideline. And it's a great throw and catch, to be fair to Penix and London, but Lattimore's just getting beat on a double move. And so it wasn't a case of they got screwed by motion, he was put in a bad spot. He had outside leverage against an out and up double move, like he should be covering that. And they passed it off perfectly fine. It wasn't the motion, it wasn't the communication, it was he got beat. And that's just the end of that play, right? He just got beat, okay? And I don't want to go in on Marshawn Lattimore in particular because he was not the only guy.
I mean, if you go back, you can kind of see Trey Amos also gets beat at the top of the screen on the same move. His is a little bit different because he's in press man. There's a little bit more of a better excuse here, and it's much longer later in the play, but he does get beat. There's also zero pressure, and I remember this play. Time to throw on this play was well over 3, I believe. It's tough to cover for that long. And then it doesn't help when Lattimore kind of gets a little grabby as well, because even with an inaccurate pass, that's still a first down. So
it was called for holding, I think, at one point, right? So even if Penix wildly overthrows it and London can't make the diving catch, it's still a penalty and they still get the automatic first down.
And Mark, I really appreciate the fact that you highlighted the motion component, because that's been a narrative this week in regard to Washington can't cover that. So, I mean, I'm not saying they're fantastic at it, but you did show that they did hand off smoothly in that regard to pass coverages. My question to both of you guys, Marshall Lattimore's been a hot topic as well. And I know, Mark, you're objective, but we've seen 3 or 4 plays so far. Marshall Lattimore's been in 2 or 3 of them. Is he really struggling this year, or what's going on with Marshawn?
Yeah, he is struggling. So is Sam still. Amos had probably his worst game in this one, but Amos has been the only corner that's been somewhat reliable. And as I kind of said at the top, when you have 2 of your starting 3 corners really struggling, it's hard to do much of anything.
On top of that, your safety's been struggling as well. It's been rough for Quan Martin as well, and now you're down to your second more box safety, and it's been rough from pretty much everyone.
Yeah. So, so that was one man coverage play, and again, sometimes players do get beat on a double move, so we're not going to overreact and go away from our new plan of playing man coverage. So same drive, they get a stop on an end around. I think it caused a 2nd and 13 or something like that. Now you got Mikey Samerstill in the slot against Darnell Mooney, and this is the play I wanted to talk about with Samerstill. Where he struggles is when he played well last year, he was playing outside. He was playing off like 8 to 10 yards off the line of scrimmage. He had everything in front of him, and he had good vision of both the receiver and the quarterback. And he would be able to break quickly on everything underneath. He had the sideline to help him, so he didn't have 2-way goes constantly. When he's in the slot, he has to be closer to the receiver, and when he struggles is when receivers get close to him and give him a little fake one way or the other, and he then, especially when you're in the slot and they can go either outside or inside. He struggles a little bit with reading that, and that was something that was consistent in college. It was something that he struggled with at the start of last year before he moved outside. And when you think about it in terms of playing in the slot, he is still a rookie, right? He played two or three games in the slot last year before moving outside, and now he's back into the slot for his 4th game this year. So he's still less than 8 games playing in the slot in the NFL. That's not an excuse. He still needs to do better, but this is something that he does struggle with. So we've got Mooney here running a curl route from the slot, and Samerstill. What you'll see here is as he backs off, Mooney eats up that cushion real quickly, and he's trying to keep that cushion so that he can keep that vision of both the receiver and the quarterback, and understand what the receiver's trying to do. Now Mooney runs a decent route here. Like he widens to force Samerstill to widen, and he eats up that cushion, and he starts threatening his blind spot out here. You can see his hips are open this way. He's trying to play with outside leverage because he's got the safety help inside, but Mooney's threatening that outside leverage. So when he gets to a certain point, Mooney does this nice long jab step, like he's going to start taking off and going down that sideline. And this is where Samerstill starts to panic. He's kind of a little bit blind to it. He's not fully in the blind spot, but he's getting there. And so Samerstill starts thinking, I might be in trouble here. He might be running by me. I need to turn and do what's called a speed turn, where he turns his hips, he turns his back to the quarterback and the receiver, and he flips his hip and turns and runs to try to stay on top of a vertical route. And that's when Mooney breaks the route off. And you'll see Samerstill turns his back, and he's expecting Mooney to be running that way, and he turns and he finds that Mooney's actually breaking off his route and creates multiple yards of separation. Mooney gets the catch at the first down marker. Again, this was 2nd and 13. Mooney gets a first down catch because Samerstill couldn't stay with the route. So that's another man coverage play where Samerstill gave up a catch and couldn't stay with it. So we've seen Lattimore have a bust in man coverage. We've seen Samerstill get beaten man coverage. Now, this is the one that a lot of people hated, and I understand the premise of you don't want Bobby Wagner on this route, but there's a lot to go into this play. So
yeah, before you get going, I already know exactly what play this is. Yeah. There's a lot of times in football games where you are just going to get beat by a good offensive play call, and sometimes you just tip your cap and move on. To me, that's what this is. The Commanders like to play. They like to rush 5 a lot. Usually it's with Luvu. This time it's not. They've got looks like 3 D tackles in there and 2 of their edge rushers. So you're already kind of, relying on some bigger players to cover guys. But this is what they like to do. The question that I got a lot of times is, why are they not blitzing more? Well, they do blitz a lot. They send a lot. And it's really not just blitzes, but it's 5 guys. They're rushing 5 guys a lot. They do it almost as much as anybody in the NFL. And sometimes when you do that, this is the type of stuff that happens. You're just going to sometimes get beat by a better play call.
and I completely agree with that. And there are other things that I want to come to with this play, but we'll start with what's happening. So this is another version of that mesh concept that we saw earlier, where they played zone and they had the coverage bust and they got lucky. This time, instead of Bijan Robinson being out in the slot, he's in the backfield, but he's still running that same wheel route, right? And you get to it slightly differently. You have this, again, a bit of a funky formation with a tight end in the backfield, and then you have a second tight end, Kyle Pitts, who's playing basically as a receiver. Down here, you have Drake London running that middle hook in case you get zone again, and then you have the other receiver is going to go in motion and run. They're going to run that mesh concept, trying to get some picks in man coverage, and you're going to see it works really well. And this is exactly what the play is designed to do against man coverage. So you get the receiver coming in motion, and at this point you see the first shallow cross is in Bobby Wagner's way. Drake London runs his middle hook in such a way where it's essentially another shallow cross that gets in Bobby Wagner's way before he then releases a little bit more vertically. And this creates a lot of issues for Bobby Wagner trying to get out over the top of Bijan Robinson. Now, when Dan Quinn in his presser on Monday spoke about this play, he said Bobby Wagner will be the first to tell you that he should have got more depth to get on top, get around these guys, and perhaps give up the fact that you might give up a catch in the flat, but then you're still on top of it and you can still make a play and stop it turning into what it turned into. But he tries to go shallow. He gets caught by both of these two players where he has to get out of the way of both of them. And by the time he's got out of the way of both of them, Robinson's got this leverage where you can see he's further outside towards the sideline. And he's just, at this point in his career, a much better athlete than Bobby Wagner, who's, the age.
Even prime Bobby Wagner is not catching up to Bijan.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's a linebacker in the NFL that's making this play.
No.
Like Mark said, maybe they're getting more depth, but this is a first down on every single linebacker in the NFL. It's just a good play call against the coverage.
Yeah. So I also want to talk about a few other little details that I've seen people talk about on Twitter with this play. So a lot of people are saying, why not blitz Bobby Wagner? Well, as Nick said, we've got 5 defensive linemen on the field. If you blitz Bobby Wagner, you're sending 6. Then you're matching up man to man. Someone's going to have to cover him. At this point, it's if you blitz Bobby Wagner, it's got to be either this safety or Frankie Luvu, who's even more leveraged on it. So that's really tough.
And they do blitz Bobby Wagner a decent amount. Like he rushes the passer.
Oh, trust me, we're coming to Bobby Wagner blitzing. Don't worry about that. So there is that. There's some people saying, oh, you shouldn't have Bobby Wagner on the field on obvious passing downs. This was the start of a drive. This was 1st and 10, and you can see, as I talked about, it's a funky formation. But you've got 1 tight end, 2 tight end, and a running back. This is 12 personnel, 1st and 10. You're normally assuming, oh, this is probably going to be a run. You've got 2 tight ends on the field. You've got a running back on the field. You've only got 2 receivers. It's probably going to be a run to start a drive. So when we're playing the run, we want Bobby Wagner on the field. He's our best run defender. So he has to be on the field for this play against this matchup. So it's what it is a very, as Nick said, it's a very well-timed and designed play call from the offense. They knew if they got this look, Bobby Wagner would probably be on the field because, of course, he's on the field for a 1st and 10, obvious run look situation. And they just called a good play for the right time. So, yeah, that was the other point I wanted to make. This was 1st and 10, so it's not like, oh, it was 3rd and long and Wagner should have been off the field for one of the younger, more athletic linebackers. It was 1st and 10. That was obviously tough, and you don't want Bobby Wagner in that situation, but occasionally, like, he's got to cover someone, right? If he's on the field, he's got to cover someone, and majority of the time, you'd rather it be the running back. But later in the game...
He wasn't even too far off on that play, honestly. Mark, he was like a step behind, considering everything that is kind of shuffled through.
I mean, he made a good effort of it. It was just a very, very tough play for him to be put into, and most, as Nick said, very, very few linebackers would make a better play on that.
And I love the take Bobby Wagner off the field. If you take Bobby Wagner off the field, we've got a lot more problems than just the secondary. You just watch this team get gashed in the run game if Bobby Wagner's not on the field.
He's playing really well. That's the thing. And we'll show the blitzes stuff soon. In fact, we're coming to the Bobby Wagner blitz stuff after this play. So Yeah, we just talked about they don't want Wagner on Bijan Robinson as much as possible, and obviously that is true, and Joe Witt identified that. So next time we get into a situation where Bobby Wagner, that was the 6th drive of the game, this is the 7th drive of the game. This time they have manipulated the defense in such a way where they get Jeremy Reeves down in the box, and he's trying to cover the running back. Now, it's not very often where you have a running back, safety trying to cover a running back. Typically, when you talk about a personnel matchup, you don't want your linebacker covering a tight end. You'd rather your linebacker cover a running back. It's a much more easy matchup for them typically. But when you think about it, you got Kyle Pitts here at tight end. Do you want Bobby Wagner covering Kyle Pitts at tight end? Not really. Do you want him covering Bijan Robinson at running back? Not really, but he's got to cover one of them typically. And at this situation, they go, okay, we'll find a way where he doesn't cover either of them. So we'll put Jeremy Reeves down in the box. He's covering Bijan Robinson on this choice route. What happens? Jeremy Reeves loses Bijan Robinson on the choice route. You get Bobby Wagner covering the other tight end that was playing kind of a blocking running back, and that's kind of a funky scheme thing that I quite like from the Falcons, but that's besides the point. Wagner's covering this guy releasing late, and you get Jeremy Reeves matched up on Bijan Robinson on a choice route, and now Reeves is very, very slow to react to this choice route, and Bijan Robinson gets wide open over the middle. So someone's got to cover Bijan Robinson. Either it's got to be a linebacker or it's going to be a safety. You're probably not going to put a corner on him. Even though when we played zone coverage and it was, Sam Restall or Lattimore, they both had a bust and he still got open. So at this point, they've tried everything on these guys. Like, what do you want Joe Witt to do? He's tried his best to get different guys on him. And just as a side note, this guy, Javon Kinlaw, I wrote about him today. He played a really good game. And this guy is just brutally strong. And it's a shame that Reeves couldn't delay this route anything, because this is a hell of a rush from Javon Kinlaw. He just drives this guy back and runs him straight back into the quarterback and nearly punches the ball out. But good play by Penix to get that out. But anyway.
Hey, Nick, how did Jimmy Reeves grade out, by the way? I mean, that last play, Bijan Robinson in space is impossible to cover, so I'm not going to blame him in particular there. But I think Jimmy Reeves kind of got some negative press by just, but I just didn't know how he graded out. We got
him at a 58.1. I have average? To go back into, I can't really give a great comment on why that grade is the way it is. Okay. I didn't pay too much attention to what Reeves was doing.
Okay. Shorthand, longhand, missed tackles, and some not great coverage. And that has kind of been typically the thing for Reeves. Like Reeves is a really good tone setter, and he can come in and land these really strong hits when he's in for a couple of snaps and then goes out as an injury replacement, right? He can come in and land these big hits, and we saw that in preseason when he played like 5 or 6 snaps, and we saw that in this season, earlier in the season, where he'd come in and play 5 or 6 snaps. He'd come in and land a big hit, and then he'd go off the field and get everyone pumped up and hype up the defense, and that's great. But when he's in, and we've seen this throughout his career in Washington, when he's on defense consistently, he has issues in coverage. We saw it against the Raiders last week when they had the bust on the deep shot, the third touchdown to Tucker. He was the quarter safety, should have been bracketing the receiver and didn't. So he does just struggle in coverage, and his tackling is hit or miss. So that's Reeves. From Joe Witt's perspective, he's now tried zone coverage, he's tried man coverage. Both have had issues. So what he tries to do is play some more safer coverages that they can get some pressure. So that what he goes to is simulated pressures. Now, simulated pressures are pressures where you only rush 4, but you disguise where the 4th rusher is coming from. And this is a great example. So you see the front 4 defensive linemen here. You got Dorrance Armstrong on the edge, and we are going to come to Dorrance Armstrong dropping coverage because I saw that was a topic yesterday. But we'll get to that shortly. So we've got our 4 down defensive linemen here. Now, what you hope is you're getting a line slide to probably your best defensive lineman, which is or best pass rusher, which is Dorrance Armstrong. You're hoping that the line is going to slide towards him, and then he's going to drop off into coverage, and that's going to leave these guys blocking no one, and Bobby Wagner rushing up the middle and blitzing, and either the running back, or in this case the tight end in the backfield, has to pick him up, or he gets a free run. And what we're going to do behind that is we're going to play a safe Tampa 2, but we're going to disguise it. So instead of a safety going deep and the other safety going deep and the Mike linebacker running into the hole, we're going to have the deep safety show a single high safety coverage, and then we're going to rotate to Tampa 2. We're going to have the two guys there covering the kind of slots. They're going to rotate back to the deep half. Your deep safety is going to step up and play the middle hole, and then you're going to have your 4 underneath guys. Underneath that, your outside corners are going to play the flats. Luvu's going to play a hook curl, and you're going to have Armstrong drop out and play with that zone as well. So that is the idea. It's a really good scheme. It doesn't work on this occasion, and we'll get to that. But it is a very good scheme. It's something that they did a lot last year. They had a ton of success, and we'll show some more where they did have success in a minute. But we're just sticking to this game for now. So they try that scheme. The Falcons don't slide their line. They keep their center and they play kind of almost a man protection, and the center stays in and he picks up Bobby Wagner, which kind of kills what this blitz can do, because Bobby Wagner is a really good blitzer. He's very good against running backs, but he's not great against offensive linemen. So that kind of kills the scheme. And then when you get to that picked up, suddenly this is where you get the highlight that people are all talking about, where it's Dorrance Armstrong's playing in coverage and Drake London's spotting up underneath, and it's, why the hell is Dorrance Armstrong trying to cover Drake London? And I get it, but it's so frustrating, because
I can try to explain this from someone that for a while did not really understand coverages and thought the same thing. Why the hell are you dropping an edge rusher into coverage and all that sort of stuff? You can't ask to be creative with your blitz pressures. You can't ask a defensive coordinator to be unique, be creative with how you're going to blitz guys, tell people to blitz Bobby Wagner more, and then also be upset that your edge rusher is dropping into coverage. You just have to do that at times. Unless you want him to run cover 0 every single play, which I do not recommend, you're going to have to do that at times. That's something that you sacrifice to get guys like Bobby Wagner to rush the passer. It didn't work. Sometimes, again, it does not work. And that's what you live with as a defensive coordinator. It's tough as a defensive coordinator to constantly be right on every single play, because you're just making educated guesses on what you think is going to work. Sometimes they do not work. And
to add on to that, as we'll see shortly, even when you get the call right, the offense can go off script and make it wrong. But this one, they went to another sim pressure a little bit later on in the game. It's the same kind of idea. It's a different personnel in the game, but it's the same kind of idea. They get to the Tampa 2 a little bit differently. This time, the deep safety, rather than stepping up, plays a deep half. You get a corner out here, Trey Amos playing a deep half. Luvu comes and plays the middle hole. But the principle is still the same. It's a Tampa 2 coverage behind a simulated pressure where a defensive end drops out and Bobby Wagner replaces him off the other side. Now, this one works in terms of how they get the line slide, and they get Bobby Wagner matched up on the running back, and Bobby Wagner does a pretty good job of running over the running back. The issue is that the Falcons have a corner out here, and I don't want to keep picking on him, but Marshawn Lattimore doesn't get enough depth out here. So we'll see it here.
Yeah, I remember this play. What was the down and distance?
I think it was 2nd and 8 or something like that.
Yeah.
Well, I'll see in a minute, but I just want to highlight. So you get Bobby Wagner on a running back. He pretty quickly beats him, and he's pretty quickly pressuring him, right? But you then got on the outside here, Marshawn Lattimore is the flat defender, so you understand why he is being aggressive on getting to the receiver in the flat. But he's also like the whole point of the route combination that they're running is a smash concept essentially, and that the whole idea is that you're trying to bait this corner to get up on this route underneath and open up this space behind for this corner route. And the corner route is a very good route against Tampa 2 coverages, because it's very hard for this deep safety to get out to the sideline and cover the sideline when he also has responsibilities inside, and it's hard for this outside corner to be able to sink underneath it while he also has responsibilities in the flat. So it's a good route against this coverage. And Penix makes a great throw into the what they call the honey hole out here, with Bobby Wagner in his face, and the receiver makes a nice catch.
Yeah, my part that was so frustrating about this play is when you run these kind of creative Tampa 2s, which they do a lot. They don't really ever drop in just to a normal cover to Tampa 2. They're always going to be rotating their safeties somehow. If you're Lattimore, you kind of have to know that safety is coming from a middle of the field, so he's not going to have a chance to come over in that corner, so you need to sink more. You need to get more depth than you typically would, because, again, typically in a cover 2, he's going to be starting in between those numbers or probably closer to the numbers. and then he will have time to get over the top, and he'll be in a better position to make this play. Because of the fact that he's starting in the middle of the field, he's not going to, he has no chance to make this play. There's not a safety in the world that's going to make this play. So you have to sink, you have to get depth. It's second down. So keep everything underneath you. Again, it's tough when it's Bijan Robinson, which is the guy in the flat, because you want to be extra careful about where he is. But it's just another one of those plays where you just kind of have to be aware of everything that's going around your play or in your coverage, and not just your own responsibility. And that's not on Quan Martin. He's got no chance of getting there.
Quick question. So this might be kind of hard to answer, but I know there's talk about scheme fit. Marshawn Lattimore seems like he's not necessarily aware to have the spatial awareness with his colleagues on his field. Is he a poor scheme fit for like his talents for defense, or is he lacking athleticism because he's a little bit older? Like, what do you think what's the deficit here?
The Marshawn Lattimore that, in his prime is not a bad scheme fit for any defense. Marshawn Lattimore was a very, very good player that played really good press man, but was also very alert in playing in zone coverage and stuff. The Lattimore that we have seen in Washington has not been the Lattimore that was, made his name in the NFL with the Saints. And so for me, the issue has just been he has declined.
You can chalk it up to age. He's dealt with a lot of injuries in the past. Yeah. And when you deal with injuries, you are going to typically be slower, and you're playing in a new system, and the first time he's played outside of New Orleans. And so again, he's just you can kind of see it. He's just a tick slow on things, not him as an athlete slow, but him mentally with these kind of zone coverage. He's just a tick slow at times. Because again, you saw on this play, he recognized that he needs to sink, but he was just a little bit late. He took one jab forward, and he was just done again. And that's the problem with him right now. It's just a tick slow.
Yeah. And I just wanted to highlight, this is still very, very good pressure from Bobby Wagner. So the scheme has worked. Sometimes even when the scheme works, the quarterback just makes a great throw with a guy right in his face.
They get paid too.
So that's.
I've actually been told that pressures like that don't matter, and that should not be rewarded as a pressure. And because he didn't actually touch the quarterback or affect the quarterback, so just wanted you to know that's not an impressive rep.
No. Later in the game, they tried another one of these simulated pressures, and this is another one that I saw going around Twitter yesterday. And it's again one where you've got Dorrance Armstrong dropping off into coverage. This is 3rd and 4. This was I think their 9th drive or something like that. This was their last scoring drive before they were just kneeling out the clock, right? And this was Washington had just scored. 3rd and 4 at the start of the drive. They have a really good chance of getting off the field and getting the ball back and going and tying the game, right? And they dial up another simulated pressure. So you show 6 guys on the line of scrimmage, and you've got Jacob Martin here. So you've got a kind of a funky look where you've got Bobby Wagner and Frankie Louvu over here. You've got, I think, Von Miller off this edge. The only defensive lineman, I think, is Kinlaw inside. And then you've got Dorrance Armstrong on the outside. Now you're going to have Bobby Wagner is actually going to drop into coverage. He's going to fake blitzing, drop into coverage, and you're going to have Dorrance Armstrong dropping off into coverage in the edge. And this is where people were saying, we should never have Dorrance Armstrong dropping into coverage. This play worked. It was not Dorrance Armstrong dropping into the coverage that caused this play to fail. So you get 4 rushers, but you're disguising which 4 are rushing in when which 2 are dropping into coverage. And it works. And we'll see it from the end zone angle, but we'll just show it from this angle first. You drop it off into coverage. Penix has to gets to the top of his drop. He checks this one-on-one on the outside. Trey wants to stay on top of it, so that's not really there for him. And then you've got a safety coming down to rob this crossing route. You've got Bobby Wagner in zone against this crossing route. You've got Sam still out here in the flat, and you've got Armstrong here, kind of both bracketing Bijan Robinson, running his little route here. You've got everything covered. Everything is covered. He's got nowhere to go with the ball. You can see here as Penix steps up, there's no really way for him to go with the ball. You've got London covered. You could maybe say over the middle of the field, but you've got Lattimore ready to jump on that. And you've got Bijan Robinson covered. So from a Joe Witt perspective, you have called a simulated pressure on 3rd and 4. You have covered all their routes, and you've got 3 guys that have got some decent pressure. The problem is that Michael Penix turns this from being a win for the defense into a loss, because and we see this all the time with Jaden Daniels, he just takes off scrambling and he outruns Dorrance Armstrong, and he puts the ball out past the first round marker and he converts. And that's where I wanted to say, you can call a really good call. Sometimes the offense just makes a great play, or your quarterback scrambles, and you are totally right. It's a great call, and you still can be wrong, and it's a really tough job being a defensive coordinator. So this, I just wanted to show the end zone angle of this, because people were talking about, why is Dorrance Armstrong dropping off in coverage? So the whole idea here is that this is your best pass rusher. You want the offensive line to be sliding to your best pass rusher, because they should be typically sliding to your best pass rusher to give support against your best pass rusher. And if you get that slide, you get the center and the left guard and the left tackle all sliding out that way. The easiest way to get pressure isn't to say, okay, Dorrance Armstrong beat a slide where you got two guys on you. Let's actually drop him into coverage, and we'll bring Frankie Louvu off the other side. And what we're going to get is either this tight end has to stay in and try to block Frankie Louvu, which is a really good matchup for us, or Frankie Louvu is going to get a free run on the quarterback. Now, you can't. It's really well schemed, and it works exactly how they want it to. They get the line slide. Bobby Wagner holds his spot to keep the right guard's attention on him before dropping out into coverage, and that forces this tight end to step up and block Frankie Louvu, which is exactly the matchup you want. You've schemed up a really good matchup. You've only rushed 4, but you've got guys out here blocking no one. You've got the right guard blocking no one, and you've still got Frankie Louvu matched up on the tight end in the backfield that was effectively playing running back. That is very, very good scheme. That is great scheme, scheming up pressure. That's scheming up a matchup that you want. Now, once you scheme up that matchup, Joe Witt can't go and force Frankie Louvu to win this matchup. He can't force these guys to win off the edge, right? Those guys have got to go win those matchups. He can put them in perfect positions like he does here. He schemes up a great pressure, and he gets the matchup they want, but Frankie Louvu doesn't win the matchup, and the guard does a nice job coming across to help. But again, it comes down to, it was a good call. They covered every route. They got the pressure matchup that they wanted, and it just didn't hit right, and Penix managed to scramble and still made it a wrong call, even though it was the right one. And I wanted to show this. This was last week. We'll go really quickly through the next 3 plays. This was last week. They ran these sim pressures a ton, and the Raiders could not cover it at all. So this is the same idea, right? You've got 4 defensive linemen down here. You've got Frankie Louvu and Bobby Wagner. And typically you'd be thinking Frankie Louvu's their big pass rusher. So we're going to slide the line that way. Plus we've got 2 bigger guys out here. So we want to slide the line this way. And what that does is when the line slides that way, we drop Louvu off, we drop a defensive end off, and Bobby Wagner joins the other side. It's the exact same thing we just saw. But what that does is it means this line's all going to slide this way, and the running back's going to have to step up to pick up Bobby Wagner. And what do you see? Bobby Wagner beats that running back easily, gets the sack on Geno Smith. That was his first sack of the game. His second sack of the game, we're doing the exact same thing, okay? We've got...
we got a feisty Mark over here.
Yeah, Mark's getting fired up. I love it.
You can honestly make a highlight package of edge rushers dropping into coverage and it working. It works.
This is a slightly different variation, right? So this time, instead of hoping for a line slide one way or the other, they put a really good pass rusher in Louvu, or they're really good blitzer in Louvu on the edge. You got Dorrance Armstrong out here kind of walking around being like, where am I going to rush from? And you got Von Miller on the other side. And so the whole point here is, rather than trying to force a slide, you're trying to get these guys not sure who's going to come, who's going to go. And you're going to drop both edge rushers off. And so both tacklers are going to block nobody. And Bobby Wagner, again, is going to come up the middle. And the running back is either going to have to block him, or in this case, the running back motions out to the flat, and Wagner's going to have a free run right up the middle, because the offense is fanning out, expecting to block the guys on the edge. And you can see the tackle's expecting Louvu to come. He's blocking nobody. We got Bobby Wagner coming free up the edge. We have 4 rushers, and we've got a free one right up the middle. That is what doing this, dropping the edge rushers off and blitzing up the middle does. This is what simulated pressures are all about. It's all about scheming up to attack the different protection schemes, and Bobby Wagner gets a free run and gets the sack. And just to really hammer home the point, exact same scheme, slightly different look. Again, 2 edge rushers. You got, I can't remember who this is on this side. I think this might have been Jean-Baptiste on this side. Again, Frankie Louvu looking like he's going to rush off the edge. He actually drops. He drops. You get your widened rushers from the inside, and then you got a little cross stunt here from Wagner. And once more, You're going to have the Raiders being like, okay, we need to block the big guys. Oh, the big guys aren't rushing, and Bobby Wagner's going to come free right up the middle, and Geno Smith's going to have to throw it away. So that just shows that scheme does work. Dropping defensive ends into coverage does work. They're not just doing it to be like, oh, we'll just drop a defensive end into coverage for no reason. There is theory behind it, and it is good theory. It works. It's good scheme. Sometimes it just doesn't hit. Sometimes the offense makes good plays.
And Mark, I thought you did a good job illustrating that. So essentially, they want to be exotic. They want to vary the different types of pressure. And the thought is if they generate some exotic pressure, the defensive ends don't have to be on an island for that long. It's just going to be hesitate and get there. That's the whole thought behind it.
Yeah,
I think it was throughout all of these, and we're going to get to the infamous 3rd and 2 with Bijan wide open here. But throughout all of this, I think you did a great job of showing all of the complaints that fans have had about Joe Witt, and the real question that I kind of struggled to ask other people is like, what do you want him to do in scenarios like this? Like, this call is one that I would kind of typically disagree with here, but when you go through the rest of the game, it makes sense why he's calling this, and so it's just tough. It's tough when you can't trust your guys to cover man coverage. You can't trust them to play their zone assignments, and then your blitzes aren't working. So it's tough.
Quick temp check. So you guys are obviously advocating or, maybe defending Joe Witt to an extent. If you were the general manager, if you were the, owner of the Commanders, is this seat hot by any means, or do you think he's like doing a good job? Like, what are you, both of you guys said no instantly. Okay, interesting.
No. I think what he did last year, and you could see sometimes a little bit of struggle, but what he did last year with what he had was one of the most impressive jobs I think any D coordinator could do. And again, here it's I don't know what you want him to do with what you kind of have on the field. You would have expected with the additions that they brought in that this would be better. And it just hasn't, and that isn't really his fault.
Yeah, the question is exactly right. What do you want him to do? What I've tried to show throughout this, we looked at the start. They started playing zone. They could not cover in zone. They kept having busts. So he adjusted to play man. They kept having guys lose in man-to-man coverage. So they tried to do these simulated pressures, and some of them work, some of them don't. And when you move to those simulated pressures, you're trying to attack scheme that you think they're the way they're going to block certain things, and sometimes it works, sometimes the offense gets some wins. And even when, as we just saw on that last play, the Penix scramble play, even when you get the call right and you get the look you want, sometimes the offense still wins. There's not a lot you can do as a defensive coordinator in that regard. So yeah, we've seen them struggle in zone, struggles in man, simulated pressure struggled. So we get towards the end of the game here, and it's what the hell does Joe Witt call? And so he kind of is flipping through what he wants to, the different things we try to do. And this one, this is the one that I think a lot of people had issues with, and I understand.
Well, it was screenshot. It's a perfect play for people to just screenshot and be like, what the hell is happening here? Because on a screenshot, it looks bad.
So this on this one, they go back to trying to play zone, and what you're going to get is a cover 6, where we talked about it earlier. You get a quarter corner, you get a quarter safety, and on this side you're playing cover 2. So you get this safety is playing a deep half. So you're getting quarters to this side, and you're getting cover 2 to this side. And effectively, what you're getting is 1, 2, 3, and 4 over 3 receivers, and you're getting 1, 2, and 3 over 2 receivers, right? So you're getting 4 over 3, and you're getting 3 over 2. That's the idea of playing a cover 6.
And this is also a coverage that they call a lot. They call a decent amount of cover 6. Like they're one of the highest teams in the league that call it cover 6. So this is not a new coverage that they should struggle with.
No. And when you get to, we're going to see Drake London is going to come in motion. He's going to run a deep over. You've got another receiver running a deep out, and then you've got Bijan Robinson in this slot spot where he hooks up underneath. And when you get to these bunch sets where you get 4 over 3, you have 2 ways to go about this, and Nick and I can go into this because we had a little bit of a chat about it. But did I draw this up? I did. Right. So when you play this kind of coverage, when you play 4 over 3, the very basic check that you go to is called a box check, where you essentially you have the 4 corners of a box. Now imagine Samra still is over here by this number, right? You have the 4 corners of the box. So you have a deep outside player, you have a deep inside player, you have a shallow inside player, and you have a shallow outside player. That you have the boxes, and they just essentially match whatever routes come towards them. So in this case, you'd have Wagner, and you'd have the safety being able to cover this deep over route from London. You'd have Lattimore picking up the deep out route because he's the deep out defender. And then you'd have Samra still playing underneath shallow, and he'd match this underneath shallow route. So that would be the typical way you do that. And that, from what Nick's numbers, I believe, say, is the typical way the Commanders would play this. Now, I talked to Cody Alexander, who's runs his own Substack, Match Quarters, and he says this looks to him more like it's match, which is a different check. And when you play match, you're playing more. You're matching your routes, but you're playing more about the matchup. So when we talk about this is Bijan Robinson. We talked about it earlier. The running back in the flat and a wide receiver running a deep over route. If you were just drawing that up, you would not want Bobby Wagner having to sink underneath a wide receiver running the deep over route, and you wouldn't want your cornerback then covering a running back in the flat. You would want that the other way around. And so if you're matching it, you would want the safety to stay deep over the top like he is. You'd want Samra still running with the deep over route, which he is, and Bobby Wagner should then be matching the running back in the flat. So that was the way Cody Alexander explained it to me, was that's how he would think it should have matched up. And that would be a match check. And this is one of those plays where there is the legitimate talk about communication errors and how you match up to these different the different checks that you go to when you get the bunch sets and the motions into the bunch, and how you pass these different routes up and pick them up. So this the communication error essentially here is that Samra still plays this like it's match. Wagner plays it like it's box, and essentially they both are covering London running over the middle, and that leaves Bijan Robinson wide open in the flat for the easy conversion.
So like Mark said, we had a little chat about who we think this is on, and speaking of Cody Alexander, he knows more about football than I will probably forget. I even have his books up there, but I do disagree with him on this one play. And the reason that I disagree with this is because I have access through PFF to every single cover six that they've ever called in this season. So I can kind of go through and kind of pick apart basically what they should be doing based on different formations and how they kind of set this sort of thing up. So they do play this four match a lot in their cover six. They have this kind of, a part of this package. And when they do this, they typically play just straight up man coverage with their two outside guys. And typically that outside corner is going to play what's called Meg. It's man everywhere he goes. And it's essentially just press man coverage. It's what they do. And on this one, if you see at the start, he's playing off. So typically every rep that we have where that corner on the quarter side is playing off, it has been your kind of spot drop kind of cover six where you have your flat defender stay in the flat. Now that could change. We could be wrong, but based on what we've seen history wise just this year, I believe that Sanders still is just flat out wrong here and needs to play in the flat. But yeah, I mean, it's just this could be the one time that they checked something different, but they also don't typically run it against bunch formations. It's typically kind of just to a two wide receiver side here. So we'll go back and forth on this. I think it's Sanders still. He thinks it's Wagner, but at the end of the day, it's bad either way by the defense. Like, this is just another communication error, busted coverage, and there is a lot of them.
Yeah. So it's another coverage bust and it's another communication error, and this is probably one of those where it would be a game plan specific coverage. So it's one where they've seen that the Falcons like to do this, and so in this particular week, rather than necessarily running it the normal way we would, where you'd have Samra still play there and you'd box it, where you'd have the four box defenders, you might be thinking, oh, in this situation we've seen this play from the Falcons 3 times this year. We don't want Wagner trying to sit underneath this. We want him trying to match this running back in the flat instead. That's a better matchup for him, so we'll play match. That would be the way that probably, as I say, Cody Alexander might have seen it. And that's typically areas that there's been, if anyone was online yesterday, there was a lot of talk about PFF yesterday, and we don't know what we're doing from Coach Spags, but he was kind of right. Like, we don't know their assignments, and we have to make our best educated guesses based on the stuff that we have. And I went through all of them. I've charted almost every single coverage this year. And this could be a game plan specific thing, and we just don't know.
End of the day, it's bad by the Commanders and some.
Yeah. Either way, it's another zone coverage that they've called where they've had a bust. Then we get into the final drive, and we've already talked about this play, so we'll cover it. We'll go back to this again. It was a good call, and Penix scrambles. So they had their chance on 3rd and 4 to get off the field, get the ball back, and go tie the game. So we'll skip through that. I need to run it through so we get the diagram of the next play. Oh yeah. So then after this one, the Commanders do a nice job setting up, getting a couple stops on 1st down. We're going back to the very first drive where we saw it was they played cover 3. We get this corner flat with combo with Drake London and Kyle Pitts. They have the coverage bust where they play cover 3, right? We talked about this. They rotate the safeties. As London comes across, they play cover 3. Amos probably should be the one coming back, but he doesn't. They both play the flat, and Kyle Pitts runs up the seam free. So we go back to that final drive. They get into 3rd and 6, I think, 3rd and 7, something like that. And this time you get the exact same combination. They get to it slightly differently. Rather than Drake London motioning from this side, he starts outside, motions across, and returns back outside. And like I talked about before, motion has caused issues for the Commanders, but this is not an issue where the motion has caused them an issue. They pass this off fine. They play man coverage. Amos follows the motion and then picks it back up as London works out to the flat and covers it fine. The issue is that Quan Martin covers Kyle Pitts man-to-man, and we've already talked about we didn't want Bobby Wagner trying to cover him. We didn't want Jeremy Reeves trying to cover him. We don't want Frankie Louvi trying to cover him. So our best guy at this point, it probably would have been Will Harris, but now we've got Will Harris is gone. So our best guy trying to cover a tight end man-to-man is probably Quan Martin. So he's our best guy that we can put in this matchup, unless you put a corner on him and you treat him as a receiver. But in this case, they didn't, right? So it's that same corner flat concept, and we saw them get beat on playing cover 3, so they play man-to-man. And again, we talked about the motion. Trey Amos covers that motion just fine. They don't have any communication errors. Amos covers the motion well, and he covers London fine in the flat. The issue is just they get the man-to-man matchup, and Quan Martin loses the man-to-man matchup, and Kyle Pitts makes a good catch. It's a nice throw as well, and they pick up the 1st down on 3rd and whatever it was, 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7. And they did blitz 5 here, so it's not like, oh, why didn't they blitz him more? They rush 5 here, doesn't get home.
Yeah, it was. People were kind of shocked when I told them that they blitzed on almost half the plays, and it was the 4th highest.
I saw
People
that.
were pretty shocked with that one when it was like, well, there was no pressure. Well, that was the problem. Yeah, like that's the problem with if you want to live in this style of defense where you are consistently rushing 5, they have to get home, and if they don't, your players are going to be on an island.
And then last one. After giving up that catch to Kyle Pitts, once again, the front does a nice job of stopping a couple runs, and they get to a 3rd and 7 or 3rd and 8. And this time, once again, we see the motion from London. He's going to motion across and return back out. It's not an issue of like the motion gets them all mixed up with communications. Like Lattimore just follows him and is playing man-to-man the entire way. What the motion does do is it makes Lattimore, who's currently playing outside leverage, he's late to come back out to it, and then he's inside leverage against an out route, which is very tough for him to cover.
Packers did a good job of this one as well, where they kind of use this motion against the Commanders, because again, Commanders don't switch a lot. Yeah. And when you don't switch a lot, this is what you're susceptible to. But sometimes it works out in their favor, and this time it doesn't. You just get beat by a good call. Yeah,
good call. And then again, it's Lattimore not being able to undercut the route, and he did a pretty good job of trying to recover to that. Mm-hmm. It was a very well placed throw, low and away, and Drake London has to dive at full stretch and pick it off the ground. So if that was a throw that was right on Drake London, there was every chance that Lattimore does undercut and at least contest that. So it was a really good throw, really good catch, a good play call. But again, it's a case of a man getting beat in man coverage. So that was the last play I had. So that
sounds like Mark's a PFF Zach Robinson fan over here.
I am. I quite liked a lot of the things he did, but in regards to like Joe Witt, I there was a lot of fire Joe Witt kind of things, and I don't know what people want him to do. Hopefully, I've shown in this breakdown that he started off trying to play zone, that didn't work. He switched to trying to play man. Guys got beat man to man. He tried to do sim pressures to kind of mix between them. That didn't work. And then he tried to flip between all 3 of them towards the end because nothing had worked. So he was just trying to figure out what could work. And even when he got the call right, Penix would scramble and pick up the first down, and he was turned wrong. So yes, you can talk about there's some communication issues, and they need to clear those up. And yes, they do. But there's also got to be some accountability on the player side. Players have got to play better. Lattimore can't keep getting beat. Samerstill can't keep getting beat. They have picked these guys with the idea that they're going to play man coverage, and it's not like these are guys they inherited. Samerstill was a guy they drafted. Lattimore was a guy they traded for. Amos was a guy they drafted. They signed Jonathan Jones. They brought in Noah Igbenogany. So they've got a secondary full of guys that they picked, and they picked them because they want them to play man coverage, and they think they can play man coverage. And as things stand, they are currently not playing man coverage well enough. And so when they don't do that, they can try and adjust and play more zone. As we saw, he tried to do that, and they couldn't keep things together. And then they were busting very basic things. So I don't know what fans want Joe Witt to be doing. He's trying everything that I see, various different suggestions. Play more zone. He tried. They couldn't. Play more man. They tried. They couldn't. They blitz more. He tried. They couldn't. So there's not a hell of a lot more I could think he could do.
I think the fans, the question that should be asked is why is the communication problem such a problem? Like, that is the question you should be asking, and it's not why is Joe Witt our defensive coordinator. The question is, why is there still communication problems? And I don't know if that's a Joe Witt thing. We are not in the room. We don't know who's kind of helping them with that, who is not helping them with that, and stuff like that. So that is my biggest concern. It will be the communication. It's the busted coverages, because again, when you are a defensive coordinator, all you can do is call the play. You cannot go out there and hold their hand and tell them to go play in the certain zone they're supposed to play in. Players do need to be held accountable. And it's just, right now, it's just bad. We could kind of see this coming for a couple weeks now with the secondary, where it's just been pretty rough. And I mean, we even saw it in the Raiders game where it was rough, but the offense was just so good that, they just scored more. And you kind of saw this last year too, where, Washington had to win a lot of games by scoring a lot of points. And that's just kind of what you have to live with right now.
So a couple takeaways from your comments there, guys. So for one, we got to give Cliff Kingsbury a medal, right? He put up 68 points over the last 2 weeks, 27 points last week without Terry McLaurin, without Jaden Daniels, without Noah Brown. He was at a deficit, still put up 27 and 41 the week prior with the Raiders. So he's definitely producing, and he's probably our best coordinator on our team right now. And then Mark, what stood out to me, you talked about Trey Amos, Mike Sanderson, Marshawn Lattimore. They were all hand-selected, Jonathan Jones, all hand-selected by our coaching staff to be on our team. If you were to ask us during the preseason, what will be the deepest position on defense, many people would say the cornerback room. So it's kind of interesting that they're the ones that are potentially struggling, right? You think defensive line? Is that what you're thinking?
No, I wouldn't. I definitely wouldn't have said corner is their deepest position. I said constantly that I think the corner spot had the potential to be very good, but there was questions over all three starting corners. And I've said it multiple times. You said, Lattimore, can he stay healthy and get back to what he once was? There was, can Trey Amos be a good corner as a rookie corner? A lot of rookies do struggle. And could he sustain that throughout the year? And could Sammer still adjust to playing back in the slot? And I said, you feel good about Amos playing pretty well as a rookie. You feel good about Sammer still probably adjusting back into the slot. Okay. You're not so sure about how Lattimore will hold up. But you feel good about getting a good positive answer to two of those three questions. As it's turned out so far, they've got a negative answer to two of those questions, with Sammer still struggling back in the slot and Lattimore not getting back to what he once was. So there were legitimate questions going into the year. There was optimism that they might get positive answers on them, and then at that point it would turn into a very good secondary. But so far it hasn't done, and that means that those questions were legitimate.
Well, let's close the show on this. Let's keep it nice and concise. One little sentence answer from you guys. So do you think the defense should be looking at wholesale changes right now, or more of like a calibration, right? Like, what are you thinking? Changing players, changing rosters, changing coaches even? Or what are your thoughts on either one of those? Nick, we'll start off with you, then go to Mark.
It's another thing of like, well, if you change players, who are you changing to? Because we saw in the preseason, this depth is not great.
True.
And there's a reason that there's a reason that they're the oldest team in the NFL. They have to do this because the roster they inherited was arguably probably the worst roster in the NFL. And they've had to kind of patch this up with veteran players. They did a pretty good job of that last year. Now, they have kind of maybe missed occasionally on some guys. Right now, the secondary, it's still a big question. But if you go making wholesale changes right now, it's just, I think you're causing more problems in the long run. I think you just kind of have to play this out and hope it fixes itself. If it doesn't, in a couple weeks, then I think you really start to look at maybe making some changes.
Gotcha.
Not coaching staff wise.
No, I got you. Potentially, if you're making changes now, might have a quick send effect. It could potentially become worse, and you never know. We have 3 weeks without Jaden Daniels. Hopefully, our offense will spark back up again with him. Mark, same question to you, then we can wrap it up.
Yeah, I wouldn't be changing the coaching staff unless there's some like toxic thing going on behind the scenes that we don't know about. But I very much doubt Dan Quinn would be letting that happen.
I agree.
So I wouldn't go changing the coaching staff. I think the one change you might consider is if Lattimore continues to struggle, maybe you and Samra still keep struggling inside, you shift him back outside where he doesn't have to worry about the two-way goes and the guys catching up and getting tight to him as often. He can play top down on things a little bit more. That would be a change that you could maybe do, and maybe bring Igbenogany back in the slot, or if Jonathan Jones can come off IR at some point. I can't remember how bad his injury is, but if he was healthy, then they might have already tried that. So that would be maybe the one change where you maybe hope that can improve things and get a little bit more consistency, even if it's just playing zone, whatever it is. That might be a change you make, but I don't think if you make wholesale changes, then you're probably just going to lead to more communication issues because you're going to have guys that haven't played together. I think maybe 1 or 2 little changes, like if Lattimore continues to struggle, you move Samra still outside and bring in someone else in the slot. But that would be it. I think you're kind of hoping that one of those starts playing better.
I agree. One thing that popped in my mind was Jeremy Reeves coming in and as a replacement for Will Harris, and you just got to keep that in mind. We're kind of like there has been some injuries back there. There have been some replacements back there leading to some poor communication as well. That being said, gentlemen, I appreciate your film breakdown. It was fantastic. I learned a lot. I learned that Jill Witt, or so Mark's a Jill Witt fan. We'll keep that in mind. So that's joking in regard to that. But, maybe the schemes where the calls have been doing well, but the communication and the execution has been something to keep an eye on. It's going to be interesting against the Chargers this week with a really hot Justin Herbert. That being said, thank you to the 817 people that are tuned into us to watch us live. We greatly appreciate it. We'll be back here next Wednesday with the film breakdown of Justin Herbert versus the Commanders. Hopefully it's a more positive one than we saw this week. All right, take care, everybody. Bye.